Hello everyone, welcome to Management Information Systems Unit number 3. In this unit number 3, we'll be talking about ethical and social issues in information systems. Um, Roughly we will be discussing what's right and what's wrong, or what we feel and what's right is with what is wrong. This is very critical in this field because um, technology involves crossing many boundaries, and in some ways people feel uncomfortable with technology crossing those boundaries. So to what extent using technology is good, and to what extent using too much technology ends up being bad, there's always a debate on that. Personally, I think technology helps us a lot, but I think it's like everything. As long as we don't abuse it, we should be fine. If we use it for the right purposes, then it should be fine. No, it's like it's pretty much like drinking alcohol. I mean, you decide how much you want to drink, and if you use it for entertainment purposes or so, it's okay. But too much is not good. So let's go through that. Let's go through those things. In this case, we're talking about the principle of ethics, right? So principles of what is right and what is wrong. But again, ethics may vary according to different cultures, different societies, different ways of being upbringing, and even generational. Because for to what for some generations is right, for others is wrong. I mean, my generation, for example, the use of social media is limited to some things, but some of you are digital natives, and as you grew up with technology, you see things like dating online, okay, but other generations they don't see it in the right way. So, but it's not much about right or wrong; it's about perspectives of what are you achieving through that, and I think that's the most important. When we're talking about ethics, there's no right or wrong. I think it's always a lot of 50 shades of gray, if we want to put it that way, no? So we need to consider too many things in order for determining it whether we should take that approach or not. So let's talk a little bit about that. So in this case, we're talking about ethics as in information systems. What are computers doing? What are softwares doing? How are they changing our society? How are they threatening existing distributions of power, money, rights, and obligations? Right? So things change, of course, and that brings new opportunities for crimes, new kinds of crimes, also in terms of opportunities. So let's discuss this case, and I think it's very interesting of um, how a certain system has changed a lot for good and for bad, and well, the implications in general. So, um, finance in general, or where we call the financial system, has seen a radical change due to information systems. We need to understand that 20 years ago, yeah, 20 years ago, more or less, when we looked at the financial system, everything was done manually. And actually, for you to buy stocks or any financial assets, you had to have a broker, you had to call the phone, you had to do a lot of analysis. So it was difficult in general, right? It was not easy to really, if you wanted to do investments on the stock market, you really had to go through the lengths of having a broker, having the money, a lot of money, and understanding many of the systems, right? So comes the early 2000s, where things start to digitalize the systems in terms of stocks, stop being manual and starts to be automated. That gives the opportunity for the information to flow in much better way so that we could access it in real time. So initially, brokers, bankers were able to see that information in their trading or investment started to flow better, right? So a good implication about that. More benefits to it started to open, people started to know about it, and then there's the creation of certain platforms that allow people to invest in those financial assets. So people start to get access to them, and initially there were the traditional systems of getting to know how to invest. If you still don't know how to do it, you really need to do it. But then we see what is somehow the democratization of investment, of trading. So we see here, for example, platforms like eToro, which came much earlier than Robinhood. So these platforms consist on doing the gamification of stock investing, which is, you feel it's more like a game. You really don't see the money flowing, losing money, earning money, etc. So particularly last year during Corona, the number of people investing on the stock market was exponential. Okay. So what happens with this system? With this is, as much as this computer system has brought democratization, now everyone can invest, because in the end, you don't need that much capital. With a few bucks already, you can do it, because you can buy fractions of stocks. You don't need to buy $300,000 of stocks. You can buy $100 of a stock, and then of course you can go through it. So in this regard, people got access to it. It was democratized. Everybody has a voice on it. The problem is, as we can see in here, we have threatened to existing distributions of power, money, rights, and obligations. So these platforms advertise as it's easy to invest. With a click, you can follow investors, but there's always the small letters, like here, trading financial derivatives may result in the loss of some or all your initial investment. So nowadays, many people see these like, crypto, I want to invest on crypto, I'm going to put my savings in crypto. And yeah, I see a lot of people making a lot of money in good, but same, a lot of people lose a lot of money. So there's a lot of implications by allowing the people into these systems. And that is not, the biggest issue is not really losing some money at individual level, earning or losing some money at individual level. The problem is economies are built into many, economies have many layers and many structures, and the moment that this kind of people starts to get in, the whole thing starts to break, right? Because it already the pre-established models and levels. And in this case, for example, all of these traders are creating a bubble. They are buying assets and buying and buying and buying and buying. But we need to understand that the economic principles talk about buying and selling. There must be a balance. So whenever there's an imbalance into the economy, already we can create what is called a market crash. And that can happen precisely because we are over abusing this technology. So we saw it the last year already, that there was this platform called Wall Street Bets on Reddit, and then not brokers, the stock traders started to agree on buying certain equities. And this one was GameStop and some other ones. So they started to push the market already into direction of going up, but then they release all their money and then the stock goes down and then they make it crash. So in this regard, like I said, the financial system is very delicate, it's very sensitive. And the Stock Securities Exchange of New York already was thinking, what can we do with this? I mean, I cannot ask you to stop doing your trades, but there must be some limits to it. So this is precisely where there is the concept of society as a component, and that was precisely the financial system. The financial system has already its rules, its way of behaving, of conforming. There was many regulations already in the Securities Exchange of New York and around the world in order to avoid over speculation. In this case, for example, this Wall Street Bets is speculation, but it's organized, and actually that is illegal, right? So in some certain way, there's gray areas, and actually here, but there's some gray areas into that. So again, this changes the system, and when we think, well, To me, I don't invest and I don't do stocks trades, so to me, it doesn't affect me. I don't care if they make a lot of money or not. It's not up to me. The problem is there's ripples. There's ripples of new situations not covered by all rules, which in this case, um, when these guys go against funds or banking or financial institutions, some of those institutions invest our savings of the banks, or they invest the retirement funds or so. So I mean, when you say, I have my retirement fund in the bank, it's not in the bank itself. It's not sitting there waiting for you. It is being used for lending to other people, for use for investments and stuff. So when this financial system starts to break because already the rules have broken and there's an imbalance to that, it does affect you regardless you invest or not. Because in the end, if the bank has no liquidity because they lost a lot of money based on a bad movement that they were not expecting, then they don't have money to pay back. And that becomes an issue because they have to ask for money from the governments, they have to go in debt, then the banks need to issue some loans to the banks, then that calls for printing money and that calls for inflation. There's inflation, everything goes more expensive. So in the end, the whole economy starts to crash. And that is a very big issue. So when we think a market crash could be caused by technology, yes, it's possible, because in the end we allowed too many people to be in there and there's no control of it. So when we have technology, we need to understand how are we going to control it, how are we going to measure it so that it doesn't go out of control, right? So in this case, like I said, we see a layer of many things. When we see this example, we saw the layers of political issues because, for example, in Korea, some of this trading is illegal. You cannot do it. There's only some platforms allowed. There's social issues because people is now gambling their savings into these things that they don't understand. And then we have ethical issues as well, which is it right or wrong to invest if you don't know how to do it? And then of course many people is suffering because of this. No, they're losing their money. Yeah, of course there's some good ones making some good money, but there's some other people losing a lot. Right? So as we implement systems, as we use computer systems, software, hardware, there's too many implications. And here, for example, we see implications of the information to actually, in general, I think the democratization of the internet is, as much as it's good, it has too many bad areas. Here, for example, everybody has the freedom to post whatever they want on the internet. And sure, you want to post a video, you want to put an article, you want to write a blog. Fantastic is your opinion, but it has led to the writing of fake news. So here, for example, there's a law in Korea. There you can click the article if you want, in which now they are trying to penalize fake news. So this is very sensitive because when we're talking about, again, the political issues, we have the accountability and control, right? And the property rights and obligations. So obligations from the government and accountability from the government to control the news. But if you control it too much, then what happens is already the lack of freedom, right? The freedom of speech is already affected. So you can say, well, it's not news, it's my opinion, but making a distinction between the two of them becomes very complex, right? And then the same thing in the sense of when we have information systems, we need to care for the privacy in terms of who has access to your information and for what purposes. Though in this case, for example, we can see Microsoft just last 2 weeks ago, if I'm not wrong, they already have they had a problem with leakage of information from, I mean, let's rephrase the whole thing. Microsoft has a lot of cloud computing for many governments and for many institutions. So they have a lot of information that in the end is very sensitive in terms of the registration of citizens in some certain country or so. So there was a leakage of data. And when this happens, of course, we need to shake. Why? Because who has that information? Let's say in this case, let's say, what if the Chinese government has access to that information? And that is information that is pertaining to the American government. So this has sparked a lot of debate and a lot of criticism of how we're protecting data. And you see, precisely that was the issue of TikTok a little some time ago, because they were saying that whether TikTok should be allowed in the US because have access to certain information. Some other they were saying, well, yeah, it's just teenagers dancing, what kind of information? But in the end, we have the geolocation, we have the interest, the topics, the themes, and when you sign up for TikTok, you already give your information in some certain ways that can be used in some certain methods. So in this case, the American government was concerned that the Chinese government could have access to many information that they don't want them to have, right? Information is power in the end in this new society. So again, as we talk about that, we need to understand a couple of things, which is, again, like I said, information rights and obligations, which is, if I have the right to have information, how am I going to protect it? Me as Google, how I protect your account. Me as Microsoft Software, how I protect your account. And that goes into a double sword edge, because some governments are saying to Google, okay, you're storing a lot of information, but you sell it for advertising and you use it for developing systems and so on. So is that correct? And we go back to the initial issue. So that information was there and nobody was using it. So they structured it, they put it into a system, they developed their algorithms, and they are using it. So the information was there, but nobody was using it. So they decided to use it. So does that give them the right to use it in the way that they want or not? So I think, again, we go back to the issue of shifting of powers one more time, right? Distributions of power are very sensitive, because in this case, some governments are feeling that they are losing the battle to private companies. And we saw it when, for example, Mark Zuckerberg was called for to the Senate, to the House of Representatives, to declare. And the representatives didn't know what was going on. They asked questions that they were out of place. In this case, actually, he did what he wanted with them. Mark Zuckerberg was avoiding questions in a very effective way, because he knows the technology while senators don't have that information. They really are not updated on how the technology works. So in this case, there must be a shift also in the government institutions, because they need to understand how information systems work, where they can get to it. No? And we go to precisely this information. Like here, for example, I give the example of what is ransomware. It could happen to governments. What happens if I extract some very critical government information? Last time it happened, the Panama Papers. So with the Panama Papers, a lot of governments were involved in that, and they were chasing the guy that released them, and it was a whole political issue. In the end, it was like, these guys know more than us. Now, the average citizen is having information to anything that they want. And I'm not saying that citizens shouldn't have the right to information, but the problem is that sometimes citizens don't know how to use it. And that is very dangerous, that anyone has access to critical and very sensitive information. I mean, look at the example of the flat earthers or the anti-vaxxers. Two groups that, with the wrong information, they are sharing it left and right, right? There's evidence, scientific evidence of the two phenomena proven that, of course, vaccines help. The same thing as that the earth is not flat, yet with the wrong information, they are disseminating it. So what happens when we have a fanatic having access to governmental information and they diffuse it in the way and twist it and tweak it in the way that they want? So this could create again a lot of political unrest. So while I understand that transparency is important, at the same point of time, also information should be kept to the people that need it and that understand it, right? Okay, so that is very, very critical in my point of view. So, anyways, in this case, like I said, we have technology trends that raise ethical issues, which is, for example, computing power doubles every 18 months. Uh, Data storage costs rapidly decline. Now we have access to more and more and more information, more data. Big data analysis is becoming very good. Networking is advancing, everything is connected, and then everybody has one of well one of these ones. That's something you're gonna say, what's that? That's my phone. So in this case, information is growing, is developing, and when do we have to stop? When is enough? When if enough information is enough? No. So we have here, for example, the case of quantum computing. That is, for those who you don't know, you can watch the video, but just in a nutshell, is supercomputer. A supercomputer that does the calculations of 10,000 computers in a fraction. Right now we use for computing binary codes, zeros and ones. This computer breaks the zero and the one. So these supercomputers can hack pretty much anything because they can do any calculations in any way you want. So in this case, we go back to the idea of Google having complete power of many things. An institution that has too much power, too much control, too much information. So as government, how you stop it? There's a documentary that shows there's this YouTube Google trying to scan every single book in the world in history. So it comes as that's fantastic. We may have all access to knowledge, but how are they gonna use that information? That is a critical question. We need to understand what are they gonna do with it? How are they gonna use it against us? It's a company. They are making money, so they are not an NGO that is working for the benefit of humankind. That's the idea that Google sells. We're working for humankind. But in reality, then why do they charge? Why do they have money? Why do they create a lot? Right? There's if we're talking about a nation and being really an NGO is and I'll give you here one example. There's this browser called Ecosia, which I use. So this browser, every time that you search something, once you reach 150, let me show it to you. For example, this Ecosia, right, is a browser, but every time that you search on it, then it's like a Google. Like you can, instead of Googling, you can encause it. Encause it. I don't know if that's the right word, but anyways, you can encause it, and you can. They use the profit to plant trees in many places around the world, right? So that is a better example of an NGO as compared to Google that is making money. I say, yeah, but they donate a lot of money. Yeah, but they do much more, no? So they don't live for donating everything. So in this case, again, we're talking about how much power they have and, how they're using it. So in this case, when we have some basic concept, which is a responsibility, like I said, in terms of potential costs and obligations of decisions of using these systems, accountability, how we use this data, who has access to it, what are we doing to protect consumers, etc. If something happens, how are we going to respond to that? How are we liable to that, right? And understanding, of course, the processes to appeal to higher authorities. Like I said, the problem is that nowadays higher authorities don't know what's going on with the data. Okay. So in this case, we're talking about the ethical analysis, how we understand whether a system is a good idea or not. So we have to understand what what kind of systems we have, what kind of data we have, who are the users, what is the data used for. So in this case, we need to identify all the actors of a certain network. Like I was explaining to you earlier before, we identified. So we're going to develop a platform where you can do some assets, equity trading. So who isn't there? The stockholders, the companies, the market, the banks. There's many people involved. So in this case, we need to understand those and the facts and what we do. So second thing, what is the dilemma? Is it, in this case, the dilemma is, should average people invest or use those platforms to invest, since they have, many of them have no financial knowledge whatsoever? They are just gambling in there. So pretty much we're letting them to gamble, right? So in this regard, this is where, like I said, we need to identify what's the dilemma, the stakeholders. In this case, it could be the government, it could be etc., right? And we start to think options that you can reasonably take. So we can say, we cancel all this stock trading for people, for random people, or we set rules. You need a license to do it. You need to pass a certain exam. In America, for example, for you to do stock trading professionally, you have to pass exams. So in this case, it becomes to defining the getting a license. So maybe that could be an answer to that, no? And then identify potential consequences of this option. So let's say, for example, we say these systems, we put a license, you have to do the license, and then what are the implications of that? Yeah, maybe in a country where everything works well, fantastic, but maybe in a country where there's a lot of corruption, you get to pay the license and you get it. So there's many implications of that, but I'm not going to go into all the possible implications, but again, we can think of that. Okay, so again, with all the systems come implications, and that means, for example, we can discuss here, whenever you have access to internet in the company, you are giving the right of to employees to research more, to find more things, but also to procrastinate because they are just doing things that they shouldn't. Or in the end, should I or can I fire one employee because I checked their Facebook and in their Facebook they were consuming drugs or doing something illegal? So again, it comes all of this. We have systems. Can we use them? Is it good to use them or not? And so let's go a little bit into just challenges to privacy. I think this one is one of the biggest topics, and I already talked about it, of how companies have the responsibility of keeping data. So here again, here we have a double-edged sword, because, like I said, for me, I mean, I have very divided opinions, but in one side is, I'm more into sharing the information. We share the information, and what are they doing with this information? They're crafting better services, better products, because they know what you want. They know what majority want. But again, in that kind of sense, are we just shifting all the products and services to what majority want, ignoring the individual? Or what some other companies are doing, which is, rather than focusing on what everyone wants, is personalizing based on your preferences. And that is precisely why we have the cookies, or why we have any of these tracking information systems. So cookies are not all that bad, but of course, like I said, they are tracking everything that you do, and that happens, and then we happen to change the algorithm of the things that we search or so. So now, let's say, for example, today I'm interested in bicycles, and then all the algorithm is going to switch for me to focus on bicycles. But it was only, I was just searching for bicycles one day, and that's it. Right? So we have other information that can be shared. So we have web beacons, web box, which is emails on e-pages. We have images that check whether I read the email, what did I read, how long I read it, etc. We have spyware, uh, which in the end is software that let us see what you're doing, right? And like I said, we have the Google services and behavioral targeting, which is all the social media. Social media in general is not free. Social media is not free. You're feeding them information nonstop to create a profile out of you, right? So, yeah, you are, like they say, you are the product. Yes, you are the product. So, in the end, uh, we generate too much information for them. And, I mean, again, how are they using that information? Like I said, personally, I'm those that think that services are better because of information. And what can they know about me? Where I live? What do I do? I'm just an average person. So, anyways, but again, there's many dangers to have too much information. So, what do we do to contrast this? So, in this case, we can we can stop the cookies. We can use encrypted messages. We can stop using social media. We can set a lot of security and go locks, etc., etc., etc. No, so in the end, the moment that we agree to use any system, pretty much we said yes, you have my information. So, however, we can control it by setting some privacy settings. And I'm not saying we're gonna get back all our information, but at least we can protect it as much as you want. You know what you want to share on your social media or your platforms, right? So, anyways, we have options of not tracking. You can use your incognito mode, etc. Right? So now, when we're talking about digitalization and ethical issues, we talk about also intellectual property, copyrights, patents, trademarks, trade secrets, which is piracy. Here, for example, I give you the example of The Mandalorian. This is a Star Wars story. If you're not a fan of Star Wars story, it's just a series of Star Wars, and that's it. Just don't complicate your life. So, anyways, the moment that this show was released, it was released only on Disney Plus, and Disney Plus was only available in America at the moment that it was launched. But we have Star Wars fan all over the world. So what to do? It was the most and fastest pirated show ever in the history of all the shows ever, right? So it was already the moment that the first chapter was done, already someone already have copied it, already uploaded it, already passed it to billions of users. So we have also a lot of challenges still to overcome in that, because as much as we have platforms like, for example, like Netflix that shares movies, there's people that still don't want to pay for it. So they do download those movies or record them, like the same I'm recording. Imagine I'm recording here in my class and I put some video and then I record it, right? So there's a lot of issues. And again, when we think of this, people say, well, I don't have money, so no big deal, I don't pay for it, it's pirated and I take it and that's it. But in the end, we're talking about affecting a whole industry, because there's this less movies produced, and you say, yeah, but the Disney already makes a lot of money. Yeah, as a company they do a lot of money, but there's also those people that draw, those people that do the technical part of it, that put the lights, that there's a lot of crews involved into that. So whenever we're doing this kind of things, there's a lot of people affected indirectly. It's not just the company that we're saying like, Disney's not gonna suffer. No, but the industry's gonna suffer. In the industry, there's people. It comes back to you in some certain way. No, they produce less movies, etc. So that is the thing. And well, I talked already about this one. No, we have already digital media has a lot of these issues of being copied, altered, etc., etc. Right now, we go to some other things in terms of ethics, which is sometimes there could be uh, software that has issues, and let's go through this one. No, I was there. Sorry, I skipped this one. We have problems with software. Who is responsible? So was it the machine? Was it the user? Was it the hardware? What happened? We have problems with that, right? And like I said, we have software, hardware, or we didn't use the system properly. We didn't put the right data, and that's very dangerous. So if we start to rely too much on this information or these softwares or these hardwares without really knowing what happens in reality, then it's a problem. And that we see it in businesses, because if we rely too much on the system and say, oh, we saw a drop in sales of 20%, well, okay, then we need to buy more supplies. But then you look at the at the warehouse, and physically you have a lot of stock there, so it doesn't match with the software. It's like, I thought we needed more because we already exceeded the sales and we need 20% more, but we have a warehouse completely full. So what's going on? Was it the problem of the hardware, the people who input the system? So we also need to keep, as much as technology helps us, we need to keep our eyes open to what happens in reality, because in the end, software, hardware, or users are not perfect, and we need to understand that there's failures, and because of these failures, they can translate into big losses, particularly in companies, same as in governments and anything that has a system. So in this case, let's talk about the last thing, which is the quality of life, equity, access, boundaries. So in this case, we're talking about the consequences of systems. Like I said, we can rebalance power, but in democratized systems, but at the same time, we have many issues. Like, for example, here I put the digital divide. This is a very big issue, because now a society that have access and good access to internet, their learning is exponential. They have access to so much information, while poor countries, they are still reading physical books, so they have no access to information. So these ones are going faster, these ones are going slower. That becomes a social issue and a world issue, because we have societies that are not advancing, and we're looking forward to make all societies develop, right? Not keeping some societies behind. Okay, so like I was saying, we have the problem of maintaining boundaries between family, work, and leisure because of the phone. Now, no boundaries. We're working 24 hours, we're busy 24 hours, or we're entertained 24 hours. And we have family issues because we cannot stop watching social media or systems or work. Why? Because, like I said, for me as a company, I said, supply chain. We have the function that you can look at the numbers directly from your phone. It sounds fantastic as a user. It's like, oh, if I'm not in the company, if I'm not at the factory, you can check the supply chain from my phone. No big issue. Problem is, you're attached to it 24 hours. You can use it whenever you want, right? So to finish, okay, it also happens, I mean, we have also, those are a bit of more psychological risk, but we also have physical injuries of the way that we use technology, because of the eyes, because of the hands. Here I put here, for example, the standard mouse versus the vertical mouse, right? In this case, sometimes we cause strains because we use too much. I have that the lower the lower one, because I used too much, and really I started to have some pain already in my ankle, in my wrist. On my wrist, I started to be somehow painful. So that is how it happens, right? And so technology, as much as it's good, we need to be careful with it. We need to understand its boundaries and put boundaries to it as well. Okay, so thank you so much. This is all for unit number 3, and we will discuss more on the following unit. Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon.